what questions that you can or cannot ask. You shouldn't ask any questions based on their charge accounts, their bank accounts, and things like that. With education, you are allowed to ask them about their related experience or knowledge in the specific job. However, you shouldn't ask about any college or high school degrees unless you can prove that it is required for the job they're applying for. Financial status is something that should not come up during interviews. Their financial status condition should not come up in the interviews. Their ownership of house, cars, or anything like that, you shouldn't ask unless owning a car is required for the job they're applying for. With height and weight, you are allowed to ask the applicant if they are able to perform the job without mentioning their height or weight, unless, of course, you can prove that a specific height or a specific weight is required to perform the job. Marital and civil union statuses should not be mentioned at all while conducting an interview with the applicant. This is something very sensitive and personal, and it's against the New Jersey law to ask questions about any marital or civil union statuses of the applicant. Military experiences, you can ask if they have gained any experience or knowledge in the military, in the U.S. Armed Forces. However, you shouldn't ask questions of how the type or the condition they were discharged in. Next, we have national origin. You can ask the applicant about their ability to read, write, and understand English or any other foreign language that is required for the job. However, you should avoid questions such as their place of birth, their mother language, or their ancestry. With organizations, you can ask them for their membership of any professional organizations that's required for the job or that's related to the job. However, you should not ask any organizational questions that could give away their personal information, such as their social class or anything like that. Personal information, with this, you can ask if the applicant has ever worked for you or has ever worked in your company under another name. However, you shouldn't ask questions such as if they had a name change or anything like that after marriage or in courts. Pregnancy, it's acceptable to ask questions of their anticipated duration at the job and the absence that they will have. However, you shouldn't ask any other pregnancy questions or any other medical history concerning their pregnancy. Race or color, again, this is something that shouldn't be mentioned during an interview or anything that should be asked during an interview. You should also avoid any question that tends to yield towards someone's race or color. Religion or creed, once again, it's something that should not be mentioned during interviews when you're asking the applicant. You should not ask about their church, their pastors, their religious holidays, anything that relates to their religion or what they practice. Finally, we have residence. For future contacts, it's acceptable to ask the applicant for their address. However, you shouldn't ask the applicant if they own their home or if they rent their home or whom they may reside with. Personal experience, I have never had anyone ask me any personal questions about religious, race, color, so those were like good experiences that I had. The first time that I've ever interviewed someone was for the midterm project, and I was very conscientious about asking them questions about anything that's related to their religion, their race, or anything like that. I was more so towards their knowledge and their experiences of the job of the interview. Also, I think a lot of people should know about the New Jersey laws and what you can and cannot ask and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable to ask an applicant while conducting any interview. You should always focus on what their education and their knowledge and their experiences experiences are towards that certain job. Just to do a little recap, I have talked about the acceptable and inadvisable things that you should do when you're conducting an interview, just so you're aware of the laws, because of the laws of New Jersey. Next we have Jonathan, who will talk about the nationwide.
So a lot of the laws she just went over are essentially the same of what I'm going to go over. They're really, really similar. So you're going to hear the same stuff. I'm going to try to go more in detail on what they are and how you can get around them and still get the same information. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. But, you know, the main thing with national laws as well as with interviewing laws is always based on discrimination. When you're interviewing someone, you want to give everyone the same opportunity for the position that anyone else had. It would be wrong, as we can all agree, to discriminate against anyone. If anyone believes in discrimination here, I'd be shocked. With that comes with discriminating questions. You can't ask certain questions to people that have nothing to do with their qualifications. So you can't ask people, you know, questions that wouldn't have to do with their ability to perform the job. You want to stick to their ability to perform the job and not their personal life, personal status, how they look, where they're from, etc. So first off, there's a couple questions you can just never ask. Just straight up never ask these questions in an interview. If you're getting interviewed by someone and they ask you these questions, you can straight up just not answer that or just say you're uncomfortable answering it. You can't ask anyone, you can never ask them about their medical condition, medical history, anything with health, if they've ever been married, have children, nothing like that. But there's also questions, you can still ask a lot of these questions, believe it or not, as long as you rephrase it. A lot of times when interviewers are asking you these questions, they're trying to get a bit of information they want to see if you're qualified, but they just don't know how to ask the question in the right way, which is legal. So I'm going to be showing you that later on in the slides. But there's also other topics in general you should just avoid in an interview. They're pretty, common knowledge. Don't talk about, their gender, their sex, their height, their weight, nationality, origin, what languages they speak, where they're from, arrest issues if they've ever been addicted to drugs and alcohol. Really common stuff that you just shouldn't do. So first is Disabilities Act. Disabilities Act was basically made to protect people who have disabilities from interviewing practices. It makes it so the interviewer has to focus on the person's job qualifications rather than their personal disability. So there's a lot of ways you can still interview these people, but a good thing you should do when interviewing people who are disabled is you should make sure they're easily accessible to the interview itself. So, something you should do is, let them know of any special parking that might be available, or make sure they can access the building that you're holding the interview in, just to help them out. But at the same thing, there's things you should never do with these people, questions you should never ask, and things you should never do. For example, you don't want to, pet the seeing eye dog. There's also questions you don't want to ask them. For example, never ask them about their current medical history. Never ask them if they've had other medical histories. Just stay away from those questions. Stick more to their actual abilities. So some things you can do to get this exact same information you wanted from them with illegal questions, you can ask them legal questions. So one thing you can do, instead of saying, hey, what's your disability, or is your disability going to get in the way? You can say, hey, we have a really tight schedule here, and we didn't make sure our workers can work here. Can you meet the schedule requirements? Same answer, same information. So family matters, another thing you can't do. You can't ask people questions on their family history, family life, wife, kids, if they plan to get pregnant, if they plan to have a family, if they plan to have kids in the future, they've had a maiden name. You just can't ask these questions. It's considered illegal. But just like the other one, you can ask these questions in a way that's legal and still get the exact same information you're looking for. So instead of asking someone, hey, are you planning on having kids? Or, hey, are you planning to get married? You can say, hey, do you see yourself possibly having any long-term absences in the next 9 or 10 to 12 months? Same information, just different way to ask it. Same thing with age. You can't ask certain age-based questions. You can't ask them how old you are. You can't ask them what year you graduated from high school or what year you graduated from college. Simply, you just can't ask them illegal questions. But just like all the other ones, there's ways you can ask these questions and still get the exact same answers. So instead of asking someone, hey, how old are you? Or, hey, what year did you graduate high school or college? You can say, hey, you know, the national law is that you have to be at least 18 years or 18 years or older to work here. Can you meet that? Do you meet that legal age? Or, hey, you know, are you at least over the age of 18? You can't ask specific age, but you can ask if they meet a requirement. Same thing with citizenship and national origin. You can't ask someone their last name's ethnicity. You can't ask them what languages they do or do not speak, as long as it's not for the qualification of the job. Can't ask someone where they're from, if they're a citizen. None of that stuff. It has to pertain to the qualifications, but you still can find that exact same information by asking them the question legally. So one thing you can do is you can say, hey, are you legally authorized to work in the US? Therefore, you're getting the exact same information, just asking the question differently. You also can ask them, hey, you know, do you have any other languages that could help you with the qualification for the position? Same thing. Don't ask me why I grouped religions and drug together, just what I did. But you can't ask questions about if they have ever been addicted to drugs or addicted to alcohol. And you can't ask if specific questions if their religion will get in the way of working for your position or whatever position you're hiring for. But however, you can still get around these questions and ask them a question legally. For example, in terms of drugs and alcohol, you can't ask someone if they've ever been addicted, but you can ask someone if they currently are using drugs or alcohol. I don't know why, but you can. With religion, you can't ask someone if their religion will get in the way, but you can ask them, hey, can you meet the qualifications of our schedule, or can you make the work times? Also, avoid stereotypes. This is pretty common sense. Include all applicants for the position with all qualifications for what you're hiring for. For example, a Spanish teacher doesn't have to be Latin. They could be white, black, whatever. Same thing with a man could coach a women's soccer team. And finally, avoid promises. I'll mix it with my personal experience as quick as possible. Don't promise anything in the hiring process because you can get sued up the ass. It kind of happened to me, except I didn't get sued. I hired a kid for a job I was interviewing for, and he was under the age of 18. I had no idea, and his parents tried to get me in trouble, and it was really scary. So yeah, if you're ever interviewing for positions, make sure they meet all the qualifications. I'm going to introduce Susie now. She's going to be conducting the interview, so give her, for your attention.
Thank you, Jonathan. To wrap up my presentation, our presentation, I will talk about conducting an interview. Some points I will come across will be objectives of an interview. First of all, interviewee's goal is to get the job, to get hired. But from an interviewer perspective, our objectives are to hire and select the best skilled candidates that fit into the organization requirements and helping in achieving the company's goals. In preparing for the interview, we must know the task and competencies, be organized and prepare before each interview, have to review the candidate's resume ahead of time and ensure that the room is quiet, non-threatening, and accessible. Create a comfortable atmosphere is also important because it helps the candidate to relax, reduce their stress, encourages them to review more about themselves, and promotes a positive image of your organization. Fully understand the role of its requirements is another important part. Just knowing the keywords and the job responsibilities from the job responsibilities is not enough. We may have to consult with a SME, subject matter expert, prior in conducting an interview if you think it is necessary for you to learn more about the position. Limit the number of questions you ask. Since it is important that all candidates have the same opportunity to answer all the questions without feeling rushed, it is important to reduce the number of interview questions. Behavioral interview questions are good, so include them if you can. Don't monopolize the conversation. As an interviewer, we should talk 20% and listen 80%. Let the candidates do the talking. We are passionate about what we do, where we come from. That's why too often we talk too much and listen too little. What should be evaluated in an interview? First of all, communication. The ability to listen, oral communication, oral presentation, interpersonal like integrity, leadership, and sensitivity. Personal and motivational like job motivations, work standards,
decision making, the ability to analyze and judge. Knowledge and skills. Technical skills and knowledge are really important nowadays.